Chris Rock has 3 Grammys. What? Let's talk about it. Hi guys, welcome to the channel. If you like hearing stories from the 90s, subscribe. Let's get into it. So Chris Rock's mother, Mrs. Rosalie Rock, spoke out last week and she had some strong words for Will. Miss Rose didn't mince her words. She said when he slapped Chris, he slapped all of us. And Chris has a big family. He really slapped me. Because when you hurt my child, you hurt me. You reacted to your wife, giving you the side eye, and you went and made her day because she was mulled over laughing when it happened. Miss Rose rightly reminded us that Chris was presenting an award to his friend Questlove, which he was very excited about. This was supposed to be an iconic moment for Questlove, a musician winning an Oscar for his documentary Summer of Soul. And of course, how many people were talking about Questlove's achievement? Not many, because it was overshadowed by the slap. Samuel L. Jackson also won an Oscar that night, a Lifetime Achievement Award, his first Oscar. And of course, nobody was talking about that. Miss Rose's words remind us that Chris also has people in his life who love him dearly and were hurt to see him assaulted and slapped on the worldwide stage, including his 2 teenage daughters, who were the inspiration behind his documentary, Good Hair. So let's take a look at the man behind the joke that sparked this whole thing. I think we will soon come to realise that Chris is more than a comedian. Sometimes those who go into comedy do so to mask the pain that they have experienced in life and to make others laugh in a way that they sometimes can't. Chris Rock's popular show, Everyone Hates Chris, is loosely based on his life. Despite the title, the character Chris was a lovable and relatable character. People fell in love with the whole family, especially Chris's dad, Julius, played by Terry Crews. But in real life, Chris and his siblings lost their father at a very young age. And such a loss was one of the things that fueled his comedy. He soon came to realise that if you could laugh through the worst times, there was hope. Chris was born in South Carolina in 1965. His family soon relocated to Brooklyn, to the Bedford-Stuyvesant area. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Chris has 7 siblings, 6 younger brothers and a younger sister. 3 of his siblings followed in his footsteps, going into the entertainment industry. Tony Rock is also an actor and a comedian. He also defended his brother and dragged Will. Chris had a lot of practice entertaining his siblings and making them laugh. His parents worked hard to support their big family. His father was a truck driver, delivering newspapers to the local offices in the New York City area. His mother was a school teacher, working with children who have special needs. Chris grew up in a busy, lively neighbourhood. He was quite popular in his local area, although he was small and quite awkward, and they did pick on him a little bit. He was well liked. Just 5 years before Chris was born, Ruby Bridges made history 667 miles away in New Orleans. After passing an entrance exam, she was one of 6 black children to be permitted entrance to attend the William Frantz Elementary School, an all-white school. Ruby ended up being the only one of the 6 to attend the school. We see the iconic photos of her going into the school, being escorted by US Marshals for her safety. Until the following year, she was the only kid in her class. In an interview with USA Today, when asked about that day, Ruby Bridges herself described the events that took place, saying, "Federal marshals came to the house and knocked on the door. I remember seeing 4 very tall white men and not really understanding why they were there. They explained to my parents that we were sent by the President of the United States and we are here to escort you and your daughter to school today. I remember getting into the car with them and driving to the new school that was very close to my house. It was actually my neighbourhood school. But because it was a white school, I wasn't able to attend before this very day. Upon arriving in front of the school, I saw mobs and mobs of people out the front of the school. And they were screaming and shouting throwing things, waving their hands. Being 6 years old, I know that what spared me was the innocence of a child, because seeing that mob outside and living in New Orleans, I was accustomed to Mardi Gras and actually thought it was Mardi Gras that day. People often ask me, were you afraid? And I wasn't afraid, because I thought I was actually seeing something different. Once I got inside of the school, parents, white parents, refused to allow their children to go to school with me. So they rushed in and they took out their children. Over 500 kids walked out of school that day. And it was because I was there. And Ruby had her very own teacher. She said, the worst part about it for me was just being lonely, wanting someone to play with. Mrs. Henry was an amazing teacher, and she did everything she could to keep my mind off of what was happening outside, because you could hear them screaming and shouting. And then that went on all day long. Today, Ruby is only 67 years of age. She runs her own foundation and she still lives in New Orleans. She's married and has 4 sons. Chris's family left South Carolina to pursue a better life. Chris ended up going to the James Madison High School in Brooklyn. Although Chris lived in a essentially black neighborhood, he was bussed into a school that was in a predominantly white neighborhood. He was one of the few black kids in the school. He said in the early days of going to school, there would be people with signs saying N-word, go home. He was bullied relentlessly on a daily basis, including having water balloons thrown at him, but they weren't filled with water. He said half of the bullying was because he was black, but the other half was because he was small and awkward looking. I'm not belittling today's youth, but I wish somebody sent me a bad text when I was a kid. These MFers were trying to kill me. I thought I was actually dealing with it. The reality is, I never dealt with it. The reality was, the pain and the fear that brought me, I was experiencing it every day. In 2020, Chris revealed that he was diagnosed with a nonverbal learning disorder, NVLD. This affects his emotional, social, and cognitive functions. It basically makes him socially awkward. Sometimes people misinterpret his responses to them, his body language. He said that he revealed his diagnosis as a way of apologizing to people who he may have offended over the years.
And by the way, it's also a way of apologizing to a lot of people without having to call them up. Because come on, you know, I'm a total weirdo. Anybody that knows me has been around me. It's like, what's up with that guy? It's a little, does he like me? You know what I mean? People say that think I don't like him.
I'd always just chalk it up to being famous. Anytime someone would respond to me in a negative way, I'd think, whatever. They're responding to something that has to do with who they think I am. Now I'm realizing it was me. A lot of it was me. He said at the time, he never confided in his parents because he didn't want to bother them. So he just kept it to himself and dealt with it in the best way he knew he could. Chris also revealed that as well as being beaten up and humiliated daily, suffering racial abuse, he was also violated.
I think I've dealt with it because I can write jokes about it, but I never dealt with it. That was just a horrible existence. The closest character I can relate to is Tim Robbins in The Shawshank. Every day was hell. I was a nigga and I got my ass beat and I got physically f***ed up and sometimes some sexual shit happened and yeah, like I wasn't but bish.
In the same interview, he also revealed that he got the last laugh and got his ultimate revenge by being successful. He even bumped into one of his former bullies on the set of one of his movies. They were working security.
Look, and I'm like, is that B? I'll just say B. And he nodded, kind of shame, you know, he was kind of ashamed. And I just gave him just a quick look like, hey man, I hope you're doing well. You take care. And I kept it moving. I didn't like, get him off the set, get him fired. It's like his sin has punished him. He could have been my friend.
So according to NVLD.org, people with nonverbal learning disability struggle with a range of conditions that include social and spatial disabilities. Often they are marginalized and isolated. Consequently, they can experience social barriers throughout their lives. So people with this condition are usually very strong verbally. So you can imagine as a comedian, you have to be very quick-witted, think on your toes, and be able to come up with quick one-liners, be able to come up with quick responses. Chris can do all those things, clearly. But they struggle with visual and spatial awareness. So they may struggle with peer relationships, focusing, multitasking, interpreting situations in social settings. The racial bullying and attacks that Chris suffered at school got so bad that he decided to drop out of high school. He did end up getting his GED though. Chris's experience of racism at school very much affected his comedy. He is known for making jokes that touch upon racial issues, that highlight some of the things that people feel uncomfortable talking about, but are hidden behind the joke, and bring it to the forefront. And nobody is safe. His style of comedy gets everyone to confront their own prejudices. He touches upon issues of racism, but he also looks at issues within the Black community. So he has offended everybody, as well as made everyone laugh. At one point, he was labelled the funniest man in America. BET, in their comedy special, said the following about Chris Rock. Chris Rock makes you laugh, and more importantly, gets you thinking. It's that combination that makes him one of the most acclaimed comedians of all time. His humour and honesty is on full display in the BET special. It's a side of Rock that viewers haven't seen before, and one they won't soon forget. Chris started pursuing his comedy career in the 80s, and he used to perform at clubs and get $5 per night. Eddie Murphy gave Chris his first movie role, a very small part in Beverly Hills Cop. Eddie Murphy saw him performing at a club one night. Chris wasn't even set to perform, but when he saw Eddie Murphy, he told the owner that he had to get on stage, and he impressed Eddie Murphy so much that he offered him the part.
Yo, what the is up, man? Check this out. I get $10 for cars, I get $20 for limos. What the hell is this?
Chris's father passed away just before his career took off, and sadly he never got to see his son's success. The show, Everyone Hates Chris, was set in the 70s and 80s, and figuratively, it ended in 1987. That would have been the year before Chris's father passed away. You know, that show was absolutely hilarious. So you have the contrast with the comedy and then the eventual tragedy, knowing that in real life, that character, who obviously was a real person, as Chris's dad, passed away. Chris's father passed away from peptic ulcer disease. Speaking of the tragedy, Chris said, "When your dad dies, you know you're alone. And there's something about your dad dying that makes you go, what's the point?" After I lost my dad, I realized that none of us should take things too seriously, because everything, except death, works itself out. Everything, no matter what happens or how difficult things become, you will eventually feel better. Chris's dad passing away not only affected his family, it also affected kids within his area. He was a huge presence within his local community. Chris's dad was a huge inspiration and role model to him. He wanted to be a truck driver himself at one point, before he decided to go into comedy. 2 months before the Oscar incident, Chris opened up about how the bullying that he suffered in school affected him. He said that the anger that he harbored from that ordeal scared him and scares him to this day. Although he was beaten up on a daily basis, there was one time he fought back, and he said that petrified him. He said, quote, "I went home. I put a brick in a book bag. This is a legendary story in my neighborhood. I swung that ish and smacked the guy in the face with this brick and stomped on him, Joe Pesci style, to the point that we thought he might die." Chris's therapist told him that he has been scared to be angry ever since. Chris said, ever since that day, he has bent over backwards to be nice, for fear that that anger would resurface. His therapist told him that he has let the whole world walk all over him, because he is scared of being angry again. The therapist told him that he needs to move past this incident and let it go and not be afraid to show his emotions. This might explain why he handled the incident at the Oscars the way he did, although it was a very mature response and I think it was commendable. As well as the loss of his father, Chris also had to deal with the loss of a close friend. Chris was very close to fellow comedian Chris Farley. They worked together on Saturday Night Live, along with Adam Sandler and other big names in comedy at the time. Saturday Night Live was Chris's big break. It gave him his first proper job within comedy. Chris Farley passed away in 1997 from a drug overdose. Addiction was something he had struggled with for quite some time. Chris spoke about the last time he saw Farley. He was at his apartment. As he left and walked away, he said he knew that would be the last time he would ever see his friend. After Chris left SNL, his career didn't take off like he thought it would. It wasn't quite the launching pad for Chris as it was for other comedians. He even got his own slot on In Living Colour, but the show ended up getting cancelled soon after. It's only when Chris started appearing on HBO specials that his career really took off. He had the freedom to express himself fully as a comedian. There was no censorship or anything like that, and he really excelled, especially with offending people. Then there was the Chris Rock Show, where Chris was able to have his own guests that he was interested in interviewing. He had Jesse Jackson, Johnny Cochran, and one guest to appear on the show was Jada Pinkett Smith. And some people believe this was the start of their so-called feud, that he was throwing shade at her on that day.
What was the Million Woman March about? Because y'all see, because black women are all right.
And then we have his famous one-liner, where Chris crossed the picket line to host the 2016 Oscars, despite Jada calling for black artists to boycott it.
Jada got mad. Jada says she's not coming, protesting. I'm like, is she on a TV show? Jada's gonna boycott the Oscars. Jada boycotting the Oscars is like me boycotting Rihanna's panties. I wasn't invited.
So was Slapgate the result of a long-running feud between the Smiths and Chris Rock? Or was it a man reacting to his wife, giving him the side eye? Chris has won 3 Grammys for comedy albums, and he has won 4 Emmys. Unfortunately, he and his wife divorced in 2016. He admitted to cheating on her multiple times, basically saying that the divorce was his fault. He told Gayle King that he is continuing his therapy and that he does it for 7 hours a week. It has been said that Chris was unaware of Jada's alopecia. Do you think Chris's condition may have had anything to do with some of his misunderstandings and disputes over the years? Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts below. You know I read the comments. Like and subscribe for weekly videos. And don't forget to click the bell for more.